Okay, so it's that time of the week where basically I give you guides on the decks I've been playing throughout the week, and this one is the budget Aggro Warrior, which I think is actually a really, really good deck. And I have a fully made one that did even better than this budget one, which is insane. So yeah, basically it's broken into 3 parts: an overview of the deck, followed by changes I would make to the deck to make it better, and then an overview and mulligans. Not an overview, a full guide on like matchups and mulligans. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So this deck basically relies on weapons, rush, and some enrage. Or not really enrage, but the Frothing Berserker along with the Festroot Hulk. It has some pretty nice bombs. It has some charge with the Corcoran Elite, which means you can close out games, and a lot of good weapons. And then the Lesser Mithril Spellstone, which is, in my opinion, now one of the better spellstones in the game, because 3 5/5s, which you can pretty consistently get considering how many weapons are in this deck, is extremely strong. So without further ado, I'll just jump into this overview, which I've already kind of jumped into. What you want to do with this deck is you want to have some card draw, which is why I have Battle Rage and Forge of Souls, along with... along with Town Crier. I thought I'd taken it out because it was an epic, but I realized I had left it in. This deck relies on cards dealing damage to themselves or dealing damage to other things and trading in to buff up the Frothing Berserker, and you can get immediate value out of the Frothing Berserker with rush cards. You have some taunt to help control the board because this is a rush and taunt kind of deck, which means it's not necessarily like full aggro, but it's as aggressive as a warrior can probably really be in the standard meta right now. So you have some things to stall out games and allow you to buff up the Festroot Hulk and the Frothing Berserker. Because as much as I say it's aggro, some of your best plays are the Spellstone, which is 7 mana, Sulthraze, which is the weapon overkill 4/4, which I only have 1 in here, but if I had a second one, I'd throw it in here. I actually think it's a really good card. I might actually take out, like, I don't know, a Town Crier for it if you want to keep it budget, or like I don't know, maybe something small like a Militia Commander. That's actually not small, but something that increases synergy. Point is, that and the Festroot Cult, all of which are 5 or more mana. So it's not even... This is a pretty late game, but still aggro deck in my opinion, or as aggro as Warrior can be. And basically the goal is wide boards, pump up Frothing Berserker with dealing damage to minions, or Festroot Hulk by having all of your minions attack, buff up some stuff with Fungalmancer, and have really big weapons that go face. And honestly, one of the best things in this deck is a Sulthraze with the upgrade combo. So it's a 5/5 with overkill, and you just basically wipe his board and then smack him in the face for 5 more damage. Sure, you take a decent amount of damage, but you're a warrior, you have armor, you have taunts, you're fine. Yeah, this game has some pretty okay early game with Firefly and Town Crier. Each of them can get you a little bit of card advantage, and although their stats aren't great, their abilities kind of make up for it. Has some decent card draw for turn 2. Turn 2 is usually going to be a hero power, though. Turn 3 is when your deck really starts going, and then you get to your win conditions 5, 6, and 7, and you just basically close out the game with that. Like, being able to play 3 5/5 Mithril 5/5 golems, just so strong. Like, he can't actually deal with it. Nobody can, except unless you're mage. Or I guess another warrior with Reckless Fury. But if you've been playing correctly, Reckless Fury won't even kill you because Hero Power Reckless Fury only does 4. And if you, again, were playing correctly, he shouldn't even have that much armor because you're going super aggressive. So, honestly, deck's got it all. It's got some control, it's got aggro, and it's got pretty solid late game win conditions to just help close out games. So changes I would make to the deck. Basically, the changes I would make to the deck are just putting in some legendary cards. Basically being Keleseth, because you don't run too many 2-drops. The only 2-drops I put in here are draw cards, and I just threw them in here later on because I took out Keleseth. Not only that, but Darius Crowley. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I don't know his name. Darius Crowley, though, is basically like one of the best cards in your deck. It can snowball, it can be aggressive after it uses itself as a control to deal with the board. So you kill off something small, and then you immediately gain some aggression off of it as well. Ziliax, similar thing, except a little more control-based than, like full-on aggro-based. But You can still draw it with the rush mechanic and the town crier, as well as it has so many abilities. You can actually just go super aggressive with it as well. 3/2 is nothing to just ignore. It can kill pretty much anything. It heals you up a lot. It basically fulfills all the roles of all of the cards in this deck, being somewhat control-y while being aggressive at the same time, all in one 5-mana package, so it's pretty busted. You also have the Scourge Lord Garrosh, which also, for those two 5-drops, I threw in the Militia Commanders. So I still had the Rush, which allowed me to draw more cards, and potential like control and aggro packages. Just, it was cheaper. Next we have Garrosh, the Death Knight, which is just one other way to put out a weapon on the board, and the fact that you get the Whirlwind means that you can pump up things like the Frothing Berserker a little bit easier. And then lastly, the Lich King. Lich King's just so good, how could you not put him in this deck? He's just, if you ever need to put some cards in your deck, do they have Ziliax or the Lich King? No. Can they run it? Well, depending on whether or not they're going like even or odd, usually the answer is yes. So just go ahead and run it. There's no reason not to. They're just standalone the best cards in the game. So yeah, that's basically the change I'd make to the deck. And basically what I would take out, as I've already told you, is the draw cards, the Militia Commanders, and then other than that, I took out an upgrade, but upgrade might still be good. Maybe upgrade instead of Lich King. Although Lich King's so good, if you have him, just put him in there and don't put in an upgrade. But if you don't have the Lich King, but you have upgrade, don't freak out. Upgrade's still a really good card and can combo really well with your weapons, so it's really not a big deal. Okay, so this guide is going to be a little bit limited just because of the fact that I didn't actually play that many games with this deck. I played like 10 with each the fully made and the budget version, so I'll give you the absolute best I can possibly give you. This deck, mulligan-wise, always keep 1-drops. Usually keep the 2-drop draw card. Well, no. Forge of Souls. Don't keep Battle Rage, but Forge of Souls, being able to draw 2 weapons immediately, is actually really good for Cycle. Having Town Crier is pretty good for Cycle too. So basically, if you can, the 1-drops, if you also can Forge of Souls, because since this isn't super aggressive, it's just a fairly aggressive deck, losing your turn 2 to draw cards actually isn't that big of a deal. Turn 3, you want to have Frothing Berserker or Rabid Worgen or a weapon. Town, or, I mean, you could also have Tar Creeper if you think you're going into an aggressive matchup like a Paladin or something like that, or an odd Paladin, or like a Rogue. If it's a Rogue, you might want to keep Tar Creeper just to protect yourself a little bit. But if you're playing into just like a normal matchup, like a Priest or a Hunter, that isn't going to go super aggressive, you can actually get away with dumping that Tar Creeper. Next, usually you don't want to keep anything too big. However, if you want to keep a 4-drop, usually Militia Commander if you think you need to play against some, bigger things. Like if you're playing against a Hunter, by turn 4 he's going to have some decent things out, so maybe Militia Commander. But if you're playing against a Priest, keeping a Korkron Elite to just go face with actually isn't that bad either. So basically, any of the 1-drops except Upgrade, Forge of Souls, any of the 3-drops unless except Tar Creeper unless you're playing into an aggro matchup, and then Militia Commander or Korkron Elite, or I guess maybe Serenite Changing if you want a wider board, are all decent options. That's generally what you should try to keep. Matchup-wise, Druid. This deck is, I think, fast enough to deal with Druid. It's just it's a little bit slow, but the minions are big enough to where you can't wipe your board. He actually just pumps up your Korkron Elite, not Korkron Elite, your what's it called, Frothing Berserker, and that is actually really, really good for you. So if he has Wild Pyromancer and he's not able to wipe your board and he does his math wrong, you win the game. Or if he can't do it, he's too afraid to pump up the Frothing Berserker, so he just leaves your board untouched, which both are pretty good for you. And honestly, the fact that you have such solid late game win conditions with the Festru Cult and the Spellstone and the weapon, and the 1 Fungal Lancer, means that you can close out games very effectively before he's able to combo off. And Mechathune Druid's the only good Druid deck. Hunter, this deck does pretty well in a Hunter. Your Spellstone is just better than his now strictly because his thing was nerfed and now it costs more. Not only that, but the fact that you have weapons are able to deal with some of the minions he plays. And mid-range Hunter is not that bad because you have so many weapons to deal with his minions that you basically win. And you have so many minions that either A, want you to trade, or B, give you the ability to immediately trade with Rush, that it doesn't actually matter that much. Mage, a little bit of a rough matchup for you, I think, because it can kill off a lot of your things without a problem. But the fact that you have weapons means that you go aggro early if it's big spell. Mage, they Blizzard. You still have weapons to potentially close out the game, so it's actually fine. But this matchup, don't be surprised if it's not actually that good for you. Like, it's just... And especially with Odd Mage being able to ping stuff off immediately, it could be a little bit rough. Paladin's pretty good for you. You can aggro him effectively, and if it's Odd Paladin, you have the options to actually deal with his board, pretty quickly, with things like Blood Racer and weapons and taunts and rushes and just pretty much everything you could possibly need to deal with a wide board deck. And then once you deal with that, you have efficient minions on the board, and then you just go face. And it's not like they have any removal, and it's fast enough to beat OTK. Priest, this deck beats Priest. Your minions are big enough to survive against Control Priest, generally. But I did forget that with Mass Hysteria, when the things attack each other and deal damage to each other, if they hit each other first, it buffs the Frothing Berserker, and then it ended up killing off my Fester Hulk, so that was a little bit of a bummer. So there's some little, niche, unique situations that are rough for you, but for the most part, you beat Control Priest because your things are too big to kill, and Clone Priest, your deck is too fast. Rogue, this deck is pretty good into Rogue. Because of the fact that you have taunts, you have Rush to deal with his big minions immediately, you have some armor, you have weapons to kill off his board as well, and your weapons are generally more powerful than his just hero power weapons, so I don't know. This matchup's not actually that bad for you either. Shaman, nobody plays Shaman, but if they do, it's even Shaman, and again, you can wipe out his board with your rushes and whatnot, and then go aggressive after that. Warlock, this deck does bad into Warlock, because you give them just enough time to get their combos off, and get, if they're even, get taunts out, or if they're cube their stuff and wipe you out, and Mechathune, you give them just enough time to set that up. Only does well into Zulok, and that one is not nearly as popular. And into Warrior decks, other Warrior decks, you lose your things, you're not aggressive enough, and yes, you can close out the game with some big things at the end, but generally speaking, he's going to be able to kill you. I mean, if you can get out 3 5/5s, and all he's able to do is, if he's an Odd Warrior, armor up Reckless Fury, and he's not able to kill all of your things, you could potentially run away with the game, but that's really it. Brawl exists, Super Collider kills off 1 5/5 and kills off the other, or some of your other minions, and this is just a rough experience for you. Mage is a toss-up. I think it beats Druid, does pretty well in the Hunter, especially after the nerf, does well into Paladin and Priest, does okay into Rogue. Rogue might actually be just a bit too fast for you to deal with, but that one's also a toss-up, kind of like Mage. And then you lose to Warlock and Warrior and Shaman. Who cares about Shaman? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, please ask me. This deck is actually nuts, and the fully made version is coming out next week. See ya.